Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. We'll be talking about the very interesting development. The Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, in fact, has written a letter to the President of the United Nations Security Council and also to the United Nations Secretary General, in which they have highlighted about the ongoing Indian atrocities in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and regarding the siege of the IIOJ&K, and it said that it endangers the international peace. Now, obviously, when it comes to the issue of Kashmir, Pakistan has been very vocal, and Pakistan is among those countries who have actually stood by their Kashmiri brothers and sisters. And we have always raised this issue of the siege of the Kashmiris living in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, ongoing atrocities committed by the Indian trigger-happy forces, and on top about the latest development where a youngster, human rights activist, was picked up. His name was Khurram Parvez, and a lot of allegations was on him, and these were all fake. And he's been picked up. The laptop, his mobile phone, even the mobile phone of his wife was taken away, and it is in the police custody. And they have launched different kinds of, in fact, FIRs on him, in which major one is about the money laundering issue. And this is all fake, primarily to make sure that whosoever is going to raise the issue of Kashmir, or whosoever is going to be an advocate of the Kashmiri people, will be subjected to such atrocities and such torture, I would say. But before I introduce you to our panelists, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch it.
Atrocities of Modi-led fascist Indian government in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir are alarmingly increasing with every passing day, and the perpetrators of these atrocities are being glorified and legitimized by the support of the Indian law enforcement agencies and the unfair silence of the United Nations and other world organizations. In this regard, Jammu and Kashmir Employees Movement, a constituent of all parties Hurriyat Conference, has strongly condemned the atrocities committed by the Indian forces in the territory, specifically under the legitimized cover of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. This law, which is brutally playing with the lives of innocent people, is the worst example of the state terrorism. According to Kashmir Media Service, the All Parties Hurriyat Conference recently issued a statement in connection with the International Day for the Abolition of the Slavery, in which they pleaded the United Nations to force India to end modern-day slavery in the occupied territory. Moreover, on 6 December 2021, Pakistan invited the United Nations Security Council's attention toward the grave situation in Indian-held Kashmir. In this regard, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi addressed a letter to the President of United Nations Security Council and the United Nations Secretary General to apprise them of continuing grave situation in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In this letter, Shah Mahmood Qureshi underscored the deteriorating human right and humanitarian situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and highlighted the persistent threat to international peace and security posed by India's proactive and irresponsible rhetoric, as well as its track record orchestrating false flag operations. He called for the settlement of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the relevant resolutions of the Security Council, which guarantee the Kashmiris' right to self-determination through the democratic method of a free and impartial plebiscite under the United Nations. The Foreign Minister also reiterated that Pakistan is prepared to engage constructively with a view to halting the oppression in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, avoiding conflict, and realizing a just and peaceful settlement of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with United Nations Security Council resolutions. However, he added that India has to create an environment conducive for engagement by reversing the unilateral and illegal measures instituted in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir since 5th August 2019.
And now to talk about it, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio, on my right is Altaf Hussain Wani Saab, known Kashmiri leader. Thank you so much, Wani Saab, for your time. And we also have with us Dr. Professor Zafar Nawaz Jaspal Saab. He's an expert on foreign affairs and international relations. Pleasure to have you, Dr. Saab, in the program. Let me start off from you, Wani Saab. Now, again, some sort of a commitment, some sort of support for the Kashmiri people once again has been shown by the government of Pakistan, when we heard that Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab has written a letter to the UN Secretary General as well as to the United Nations Security Council's president, where he has talked about the right of the self-determination. He's talked about the impartial inquiry of what's going on. Plus, he also referred to the UNSC's resolutions about this particular area and problem. Now, sir, this modern day slavery, especially when you talk about the Kashmiris who are living there, the kind of, I would say, atrocities that have been subjected to those innocent people, the kind of indigenous homegrown freedom movement that has been crushed, or rather the efforts are going on by almost 1 million men in uniform against the Kashmiri people. Now, sir, things are getting from bad to worse with each passing day, and especially post the abrogation of the Article 375. What exactly is going on in Kashmir at the moment as we speak, sir?
So first of all, I will refer to the Foreign Minister's letter to Secretary General and President of UN Security Council. This is, I think, 18th letter which Foreign Minister has written to these dignitaries after the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, that's from 5th of August 2019. And Pakistan has been reminding, and Foreign Minister in his letter has this time again reminded the United Nations of its resolutions, and also the kind of atrocities the Indian forces are carrying out in occupied Kashmir, and along with the current situation wherein the young people are killed in fake encounters and properties are demolished and collateral damage is inflicted on the people of Jammu and Kashmir, along with what mechanization India has done from 5th of August till date in order to change the demographics of Indian occupied Kashmir, and in order to have an attack on the Kashmir's identity, culture, their land, language, etc. Along with that, Foreign Minister has also referred to the arrest of noted human rights defender Khurram Parvez, of whom you referred also in your intro. Khurram Parvez is the most credible voice in the international arena. Now, when we see what is happening in Kashmir, it's not only after the 5th of August we see the Indian forces are committing the human rights violence in Kashmir. This has been going on for the last 33 years, especially what the Indian army is doing, and with the complete impunity against any prosecution. They are not answerable to any of the
draconian laws, yes.
But along with that, what they have currently done, they did it in 2016 also. They detained Khurram Parvez on 2016 also. He was not allowed to go to Geneva and thereafter put behind the bars. And at that time, there was a huge international condemnation of his arrest. And Khurram is such an incredible human rights defender of the international repute. The United Nations Human Rights Commissioner's Office has made a documentary on Khurram, who is Khurram and how he is, because he is not a Kashmiri human rights advocate. He's a renowned international human rights advocate.
Correct.
He's the chairperson of the Asian Federation of Enforced Disappearing Persons, and also has done a lot on the enforced disappearances, doing all this, and has produced a lot of literature on the human rights of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, especially when you come to structures of violence and alleged perpetrators, facts underground, buried evidences, and militarization, militarized pilgrimage, and a lot like these reports.
So he's been showing the true picture.
What we see at internationally, the human rights systems at the international level, be it Human Rights Council, Office of the High Commissioner, or Special Rapporteurs, or international NGOs, you can see there is a lot of concern on the human rights situation in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and especially on the arrest of Khurram. Now, the Khurram's arrest is an alarming situation. All of the Kashmiri leaders, they were caged. The main aim at that time was from the Indian government to debase the Kashmiri leaders, discredit them, and keep them away from their population, from their people. In order to discredit them, the investigation agency which India has, NIA, National Investigation Agency, all those leaders have been booked under these money laundering cases and terror funding cases in order to discredit them that they were receiving money and all that. Now, the credible voice on human rights, which the Indians most they wanted to discredit this voice, because they thought after putting the internet shutdowns in Kashmir and by putting Kashmir into lockdown on August 5th onwards, that international world would not come know what's happening in Kashmir. But till then, till this date, 11 communications from UN special rapporteurs were sent to the government of India.
And what happened after that?
Because the government of India has to answer all those allegations that these allegations have come before us, you have done this, you have done this, you have done this on different occasions, on these fake encounters and all that. Then government of India, the National Security Advisor's Office and especially Ajit Dole himself, he's on record while addressing passing out parade of police officers on 11th of November, when he was addressing the passing out parade of police officers, IPS officers, he said, you see, now the fight, the armored fight using army and others military might is so costly, but now we have to deal with the civil society. So in order to deal with the civil society, first attack was on the Khurram Parvez. In order
so they have marked the individuals
to mark the individual, to discredit this is not only Khurram Parvez. We are now concerned about all the human rights defenders in Kashmir, like
all
Parvez Imroz, Parveena Ahangar, who have the international repute, but India is trying to discredit it so that the voices could not reach to the international audience.
Very well said. Now, Dr. Saab, a couple of important points and a couple of important issues, which were raised by Wani Saab. Now, so first of all, we have been hearing about disappearances. Yes, we have also talked about the mass graves. We have talked about women being raped. We have talked about pellet gun use on the faces and blinding the youth. We have talked about so many youngsters who were Kashmiris. I mean, the moment, they were happy, they were supporting cricket basically. Forget about the teams. We know what they all went through. But now, sir, when you talk about this, the cases which have been registered against the individuals and credible people I'm talking about, or certain charges have been framed, particularly about money laundering and terror financing, and these are non-bailable kind of, all these charges. But having said that, people like Khurram Parvez, very credible voice, not only for the Indian audience, perhaps for the global audience. And this man has been picked up, and God knows what sort of a future he has for himself and for his family. All the belongings, whether it's the laptop or the phone, even the phone, mobile phone of his wife was snatched away. And God knows how many FIRs have been launched against him. Now the point is, is this the new technique now to sort of put a check on this rising, this phenomena of the right for the self-determination of the Kashmiri people? Dr. Saab?
I think that it's a reflection of frustration of the Modi government. Generally, they were thinking that after revoking the 370 and 35A articles, they will be able to control Kashmir within 1 year or 2 years, but they failed. If we see that you can say resistance within the Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, with the passage of time, it is increasing. Though great powers, due to their, you can say, economic and military interest with India, like United States and Russia or other states, they are not highlighting or not paying much attention, but at the same time, international community is very much now sensitive about it. And picking the Khurram Parvez or these kind of the thing, you can say, leaders, it's a reflection of the frustration. Why? Because they start feeling their military might fail to control the Kashmiri uprising or pacify it. Second, they realize that gradually international community is becoming more and more sensitive. So they are basically misled with this conclusion by these kind of the Ajit Dole or their conclusions that maybe the Khurram Parvez was the only voice or these kind of the peoples, they have a connection, international affairs, but they are failing to realize that if you continue genocide in one area, naturally resistance grow, because the more they kill, the more reaction and the more noticeable. And here, if we see the government of Pakistan realizing that we are not going to involve in military, but diplomatically, it's very much determined and highlighting. But my understanding is, if you see the Indian media or international media, they are not paying much attention on our protest or our letters. They are paying attention what the Mahmouda Mufti is saying, what the Kashmiri leaders themselves are saying. So if they arrest Khurram Pervez and then again keep behind the Indian pro-Delhi Indian Kashmiri leadership behind the bars, what else is left? They have been trying demographic, they are trying killing, as you have listed number of the atrocities which they committed. If they fail to pacify the Kashmiris' resistance, my understanding is that with the passage of time, it will be further grow. And that is alarming. Though alarming for us as well as alarming for the international community is, on the one side, if the human rights or these kind of the crises continue, they breed the militancy, radicalization,
Absolutely.
or these
They're
kind of
directly
things.
related.
They are related. And second is that in the next March, UP, Uttar Pradesh election, then follow up Gujarat election, Prime Minister Modi has failed to sell anything else except violence, Kashmir, or these kind of the things. Definitely, I can very confidently say there will be a probability of what we call as false flag in the near future, and that false flag will be definitely going to lead to a conflict, because two very major incidents, three I can put like this way. One, at Goa, when the Amit Shah said surgical strike is again possible, he wanted to hide their failure in the last 2 years just to justify what they did in Kashmir and failed. Second, they awarded this Air Force guy, Chakravir, and that was why they are awarding. That is the hammering. And third is now they cracked down on the civil society. Now, the allegations which you spelled out, according to them, is it possible there's a complete blackout in the Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, and that blackout, is it possible money laundering? It's very interesting and strange. And then which kind of the allegation they are framing, is the international community is blind from where the money is coming and how they are trying, because if everything is closed and 24 hours there is a monitoring.
You're the judge, you're the jury.
No, but first how you produce the evidence. Okay, you can manufacture.
Do you need to produce any evidence to convict
No, there's
important.
important. Evidence, you are right, they don't need to produce the evidence within India. But international, there is a silent supporter of the Kashmiris.
So you believe that this particular issue or this incident can in fact trigger some sort of a voice that could be raised?
No, trigger is very, you can say, strong word, because international communities, the leadership of the international communities, conscious is silent and sleeping over the Kashmir. However, the common man or general public in the international community is sensitive, because the trigger means that when the states or the leadership, they condemn. The leadership, American leadership or the Western leadership, is more interested in the Indian economic, military, energy, you can say, market. But at the same time, let's say what we are hearing now, what is happening, and earlier Wani very rightly pointed out that there are different organizations which condemned, even in 2016, they are definitely going to condemn. So even if it cannot trigger a bigger response, but at least it is going to sustain, or you can say, you can say, striking the conscience of the international community, this incident. So it is not easy for the Indians to digest.
All right. Now, Wani sir, another important development. I remember you must have read about the story where the Indians claim that it was very unfortunate and mistakenly 15 men were killed. They were from Nagaland. Next slide, perhaps. Now, 15 people. So that means that, it's not only Kashmir. Now, when you talk about Manipur, sir, in UK, whatever happened, they have their leader and he's very vocal and he's also talking about the human rights issue. You talk about Assam, where a farmer was brutally killed, and in the presence of police, the so-called law enforcement agencies. And look what the cameraman was doing, jumping over the chest of the dead body. And this was all recorded and shown to the global world. We haven't heard much that what has happened in that regard. Then 15 people being killed in Nagaland. So the cases in Kashmir, sir, every other day we hear about the extrajudicial killing. They arrest people and then they kill them, in fake encounters. Now, this has been going on for a very long time. So, how long will this continue? Do you think this particular red letter, and you mentioned this was the 18th letter post the abrogation of the Article 370, what sort of a difference can it make, sir? Is it going to just lie in some sort of a drawer, or perhaps some action would be taken?
See, in a way, the letter which the Foreign Minister sent, it's a reminder to the international community that we are watching, we are looking at the things what are happening in Kashmir, and we are very much concerned about that. Now, we will leave up to the UN Secretary General and the President of the Council for their response, what they say. As you said about the extrajudicial executions or the killing of the villagers in Manipur, and what they said, it was a mistaken identity. We thought the terrorists are coming.
And about a few months back, again, one of the colonels,
see,
if you remember, was also killed by the Naxalites.
Armed Forces Special Powers Act is enacted in the Seven Sisters from 1958. And that's why we call it Armed Forces Special Power Act of 1958 and enacted in Kashmir in 1990. And from 1958 until 1990, nobody in the world knew about the Armed Forces Special Power Act, and the world was very much silent on this, what has been happening to the people of Northeast. I will quote here a human rights defender of the Northeast, a very prominent human rights defender. He said once in Geneva, he said that I think it's blessing in disguise that this Armed Forces Special Power Act was enacted in Kashmir. And it's because of Kashmir, you people were able to come here and narrate the stories of Armed Forces Special Power Act, how horrible it is, how it overrides the right to life in Kashmir. And now the people are listening to our plight. And now the government of India is
so
in a way
the issue of Kashmir has also highlighted the issue people are facing at the moment in other parts.
Now, coming to extra in Kashmir, always we have seen whenever they kill a civilian or all these things, and when there is a public protest and all that, then Indian government says that it was a stray bullet, it was a mistaken identity and all that. It's not one case, in hundreds of cases such things happened. And most recently what we saw, the fake encounter at Hyderpura where they killed a trader and a doctor. And then they themselves confessed that they were caught in crossfire and they were not militants. And firstly, they
imagine not 1, 2, 15 people,
and now
15 families.
In order to the next, the Rambagh fake encounter took place only after a few days after that, when they just dragged out 3 youth from the car and shot them in the public. In the presence of the public, and then they coined a term, hybrid terrorists. They were the hybrid militants. Now, the former General Officer commanding, who was commanding the Chinar Corps in Srinagar, General Huda, when he was asked about this hybrid, what is this? He said, I have listened now, I have served in Kashmir, I have come across the upper ground workers, this and that, but this is the first time. Now it means that each and every Kashmiri is a hybrid militant. It means that
you can pick up anybody and
agencies, by virtue of this, giving them this authority, they can kill anybody, and by virtue of they have the impunity for that. So Kashmir, each and every day, there is an extrajudicial killing, there is an enforced disappearance, there is a case of torture everywhere happening in Kashmir. As telling Professor Saab about will there be a trigger at international level? Though there is not a trigger, is a huge word that international community as a whole should come out. But at Khurram's arrest, we have seen the opinion piece in New York Times, you have seen in Washington Post, in Guardian and other papers. At least I have collected there about 100 concerns shown by the international personalities on the detention of Khurram, which includes the Human Rights Commissioner's Office. A spokesman gave a press conference on it.
Absolutely,
his
sir. I've got
and
so many
also
friends who
the
are
special
American,
rapporteur on
and
human rights
always
defenders.
ask about it.
Human rights defenders. She was in her first tweet. She said, "Khurram is a human rights defender, not a terrorist." It was her tweet. So the international community is getting more and more. The Khurram arrest has created more awareness of international
Sir, if you allow me, we've been joined in by Mr. Anwar Iqbal Saab, senior journalist from Washington, USA. Anwar Saab, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And thank you so much, sir, for taking out your time and talking to PTV World. Now, sir, interestingly, we're talking about the ongoing atrocities in Kashmir and the way they pick up people, and we hear about this extrajudicial killings, I mean, these fake encounters. Imagine since 1989, Anwar Saab, 96,000 extrajudicial killings they have taken place. Just imagine, you're talking about over 100,000 families, so many children who are orphaned, so many parents, I mean, who have gone through such pain of losing their loved ones and their children in particular. Now, sir, first of all, since we were talking about this very particular letter written to the United Nations Secretary General as well as to the President of the United Nations Security Council. Now, sir, the government is doing whatever they can do, but Wani Saab was just mentioning that this is the 18th time post the abrogation of Article 370 that the Foreign Minister or the government of Pakistan has in fact addressed and written such letters, and they have tried their level best to highlight these issues. But sir, nothing is happening now. Since you are in the United States of America, sir, and currently the relationship between Pakistan and US isn't that great. But when you talk about the relationship between India and United States of America, from a transactional point of view, it is more, getting into a strategic kind of an alignment. Looking at this kind of a scenario, sir, and then talking about those letters written to the UNSC and to the President of United Nations Security Council and the Secretary General, do you think it is going to make any difference, or is it just going to be an SOP? Will it make any difference as far as the decision makers and thinkers sitting in USA are concerned?
So first of all, thank you very much for taking me on this important issue. As you explained, there are two aspects of this, rather sort of Pakistan's effort to highlight the Kashmir issue. First is, what should Pakistan do? I think Pakistan has done what Pakistan should do, which is, as you said, that this is the 18th letter Pakistan has written or sent to the United Nations, and Pakistan should continue doing this because, as you said, people in Kashmir are suffering. They are being tortured, killed, maimed, and Pakistan is the only country that feels their pain strongly, and Pakistan has a duty to highlight their suffering. So we are doing it, and we should continue doing that. Now, the impact of the letter. The letter is written to the United Nations, not to the U.S. government. So the only way it could have had an impact on the U.S., or at least on the U.S. public, if it had been highlighted by the U.S. media. But I was just thinking, after I received your call, I was just searching the internet, and I did not see any major U.S. media outlet even mentioning the letter. The Pakistani media has reported it, the Indian media has reported it, almost every Indian newspaper has, but it has been totally ignored in the United States. They are more focused on other issues, domestic politics, and of course, Ukraine and Putin's visit to India, but not a word about Pakistan, India, or Kashmir, or the Pakistan-India relations. So that has been ignored by the U.S. media. The U.S. administration, as you explained, is right now more interested in building a strategic relationship with India. So I do not see this letter or any letter making much of a difference there, because their number one priority is to contain China. For containing China, they feel that India is more useful than Pakistan. Pakistan is not going to follow U.S. dictates on this particular issue. Pakistan is not going to take on China, while India is more willing to do that. So they don't see the U.S. administration, whether it is Biden or Trump or whoever comes to power. I do not see any U.S. administration actually making any major change to this policy. They will try to build up the relationship with India And whenever we raise the issue of Kashmir at briefings in the State Department or even at your think tank, they just repeat one point, which is that it is an issue. We recognize it as a dispute between India and Pakistan, but we can only play a role if both India and Pakistan ask us to do so. Otherwise, we cannot do a thing.
All right. Thank you very much, Anwar Saab, for your comments. Now, Dr. Saab, another important area, when we talk about the demographic changes, Dr. Saab, that is, I think, the most concerning aspect. We are looking at 4.2 million, that is 42 lakh fake or the domiciles, whatever you may call them, that have been given. So that means that you were actually looking at around 48 to 50% of the total population of Kashmir kept aside, and these domiciles granted to mostly to their loved ones, I would say, sir. That is going to be the major demographic change in the region, sir. Let's suppose in another 5 years from now, sir, let's suppose another 2 million, 3 million domiciles are again, given to so many people. And especially these are the people who are either having some sort of a military background or retired army officers or Jawans or JCOs who will be located there. So that means, sir, that you're talking about families, huge number, huge chunk. And that is definitely going to make the difference. So now, as we all know that the word Kashmir, the K factor has been eliminated. It's Jammu and Ladakh, that's what they call it, sir. It's no more Jammu and Kashmir, J&K as we used to call it. Name has been changed. The overall map has been changed. The demographic changes are there. The atrocities, they have multiplied, by force. What does that mean to an average Kashmiri, sir?
I think that it's an open secret that they wanted to make the Kashmiris minority in their own area. They wanted to capture their territories or their lands and going for selling the others. There are investors from abroad as well. Kashmir is a very tourist place, very good for many things and attractive for these kind of the investments. But they are failing to realize Kashmiri's population is not a few numbers. By changing the domicile, of course, we say that the retired military people or these people, they definitely registered by get the domicile and get the benefit. My understanding is they are not going to be settled in that region or that area. The reason is very simple. These kind of the actions, they are alienating the Kashmiris from Delhi. Earlier, when we see in the Indian occupied, there were two groups. One was pro-plebiscite or pro-independent or pro-Pakistan. And there was a very important group, pro-India, Delhi, that within the, you can say, this arrangement, constitution arrangement or 370 article arrangement, they were happy and they were ready to continue. But now they are also alienated. So it means that there is a unity factor. Now with the issuing of these certificate, you can say domiciles, or what you very rightly pointed out, with the demographic change, what is going to happen? It will be going to provide or give more job opportunities to these settlers, business opportunities to these settlers, and the locals will be alienated. And then when the locals or these people are deliberately, all the options for survival they will close, they are going to fight back. And that's why, if you see that now the people like Khurram or these people, they are posing a threat to the
all
Indian.
the voices basically.
Otherwise, earlier, if you see that their voices were there, they were very active. But these kind of the people who had international stature, or you can say, they were treated that, okay, they were talking about the human rights or violation of the Kashmiris' rights, but there you can say protest, or they were not triggering, which you were earlier using the word, and as Wani Sahib had given us that all these kind of the things happen. It means that reaction is equally there, and that reaction is not ignorable. And if that reaction is not, how we tangibly prove? Wani Sahib said that all the media or the leading newspapers, they are not highlighting. And now this is not an open secret that you are getting a domicile of Kashmir, but you do not belong from the Kashmir. And of course, for how long these things will be continue? Definitely,
But sir, this change is inevitable. I mean,
no, look, we have to be very, very clear. Since last 33 years, the process of genocide or these kind of the acts is uninterrupted. If that process, what it has transformed, it had, you can say, cultivated more violence in the society. It had now made the, you can say, teenagers or youngsters as a violent fighters. Earlier, if you see the Kashmiris, they were very much demanding the right of self-determination, but they were using their political right. They were using their slogan. But now, because of these policies of the India, they have given a gun in the hands of the youngsters. And are they able to snatch that gun? My understanding it's impossible. And why I'm saying impossible, that their frustration is very much visible in these kinds
so
of
sir,
acts.
when the Indians end up blaming Pakistan that these are Pakistani terrorists, this is a Pakistan-sponsored terrorism campaign. I mean, these are the words they normally use in their media. And they show their entire audience or the public of India as if Pakistan is a terrorist country and they are fueling this terrorism inside Kashmir and elsewhere also, by the way. And look at us, I mean, we are innocent and we are the targets. Now the reality is totally 180 degrees opposite, sir. It's a different ballgame, Wani Saab. Now, looking at the current situation, sir, don't you think the world leaders like Vladimir Putin is visiting India, and obviously issue of Afghanistan is going to be there, but perhaps the issue of Kashmir won't be there? So it hasn't become an international issue yet, where the the head of the state of India and anybody who is visiting, or
No, we have to be very, very much careful. For Russians, Kashmir was not any issue. From the very beginning, they had a consensus with India because they were allies of the India, and this alliance didn't break to date. And Russians want to sell the $1 billion, you can say, weapons to India, and those weapons are important for the Indians, and India is their market. So we never heard from the Russians.
It's more of a transactional relationship?
No, it was permanent. On the Kashmir issue, Russians never said anything. My interest is not, that's why I said that the international community leaders they are dumb on their mum. But on the other point here is that if this is the situation, then in the last 33 years, Indians, instead of controlling it or decreasing their resistance, the resistance of the Kashmiris have been multiplied. Second important point is, can you give me any example that where foreign engineered resistance or freedom movement sustainable? No.
Not
indigenous factors is contributor.
Yes,
because in this kind of asymmetrical warfare or movement, what we say 3 Ps are very important. Political support, of course, they have a political support from Pakistan, from the other, diplomatic, but there are 2 more features: physical sanctuary and popular sanctuary. If they have no physical or popular sanctuary, physical even comes from the popular sanctuary. If there is no popular sanctuary, then these movements die within months or within a year. India had a border control. India has every entry-exit control. You yourself said that India has 1 million troops deployment, paramilitary forces there. Then why they are failing to eliminate? India has a bigger voice, being its economic and political market, and especially because of the transformation in the global politics and the able to present itself as a balancer to the China's rise. If in such a situation, India is able to control, let's say, political support or minimize the political support, why with all these kind of the tactics and strategies, India failed to minimize the physical and popular sanctuaries of the Kashmiris or Kashmiri resistance forces within that valley? That confirms that it is not engineered, it is not foreign. Whatever India is saying, world is realizing it if they are not speaking. Think for a moment, if the international community was admitting or accepting the Indians' point of view, then definitely you are not seeing this kind of response which we are now reading, hearing on Khurram. Parvez, that is an important point.
Now, Nawaz, your take on the same point.
Yeah, Professor Saab rightly said. You see, when we see the Indian way of doing in Kashmir, demographic change and all that, what they have done in past, I say, 2.5 years in Kashmir, the way they have a constitutional warfare in Kashmir, changing all the laws, changing
Almost 900 days.
Everything they changed in order to change the demographic in Kashmir, to invade Kashmiri's culture, identity and all that. As you said, 4.2 million domicile certificates have been issued. But you must remind that all these are the total domiciles which have been issued. It includes also the native Kashmiris.
One point. I mean, for example, if a domicile is given to Mr. X, let's suppose, or his family, but that man, since he feels that it is not safe for him to live in Kashmir, and he lives in Delhi,
I'm coming to that.
Is he eligible to vote in a referendum or a plebiscite?
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. He is eligible to vote. He can vote also. I'm coming to that point. You see, till this date, despite all the assurances from the government of India, from its all agencies to the people to come and purchase land in Kashmir, to settle in Kashmir, no one has purchased land in Kashmir Valley. 2 people have purchased land in Jammu. 2 people have purchased land in Jammu. No one has purchased land in Kashmir because no one wants to put its life in danger. That's one thing. What Indians want to do, they have this mechanization. These people will get domiciles, thereby they will be eligible to vote, and they are in March. There will be the result of the delimitation commission. Thereby they can increase the seats in the legislative assembly, and then have the elections in the Kashmir, and then put a Hindu chief minister in Kashmir. By virtue of these votes and all that thing, what they do, this is their plan. They are onto that plan, and they are doing all that. Professor Saab rightly said, there is complete alienation against India. What Indians promised at that time when they enacted abrogated Article 35 and 370, they said that we will end the dynasty rule in Kashmir. They have been corrupt and all that. We will do this. We will bring investment in Kashmir. We will bring jobs in Kashmir. And instead of that, none of those investments so far come to the Kashmir.
No jobs.
One thing they have done, one thing which they have done, that is they are taking the lands of people forcibly. The Indian occupational forces are taking that land forcibly, asking that it's a strategical and they can take it because they have changed the law in that perspective. So they are doing this. No investment has come so far in Kashmir.
So now all the claims by the Ambanis
till this, they failed to create the leadership of their own choice. And they are again
so you can't do that
referring towards those Mahbubas.
It won't make any difference. Yes.
They are referring to that. They failed in that also. And that means they are not already ready to talk to the Indians, because what Indians did, that was a betrayal to them.
Absolutely.
Not to us, because we were already demanding the complete right to celebration. They were the ones who collaborated with India till the
I think
August
the more
5th
the
process.
Indians will get involved in this Kashmir issue and the kind of formula they have at the moment, it is going to be an absolute failure in the long run. But anyway, since I was just told, sir, I'm totally out of time.
Yeah, of course, these formulas are going to increase the miseries of the Kashmiri people, but they are not going to, you can say, pacify the resistance.
That's the actual issue, sir. When you talk about, there's this beautiful Urdu word, niyat, you know, the niyat of the Indian leadership.
It will be going to strengthen
it is not to basically liberate and look after the Kashmiri people, sir. Primarily, they really want to, you know, keep on, making sure that the entire beautiful valley should be more or less like a jail.
Beautiful piece written by one Kashmiri that there is no rule of law, there is rule of gun in Kashmir.
Unfortunately, but that's true.
Continue.
That's true. Dr. Saab, thank you so much, sir, for your presence. Wani Saab, always good to see you, sir. And that's all we have for this. I'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow at 8 to 10. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.